Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today and happy solstice. We're glad for you to be here to share this with us. And my guest today is Michelle Gibson. And I'll read just a little bit about Michelle for those of you who are new to her. And Michelle was fascinated by megaliths most of her life, and her journey has led her to uncovering the keys to truth. She found a star tetrahedron on the North American continent by connecting the dots of major cities and extended the ley lines out, or the lines from those out. Then she wrote down the cities that lined up primarily in circular and linear fashion and got an amazing tour of the world of places she had never heard of with remarkable similarities across countries. She firmly believes there would be no mysteries in history if we had been told the truth. Isn't that for sure? And I forgot to put your contact information in the description. And so I'll do that as soon as we're done. And I'll give you a chance to give your contact information verbally to Michelle at the end. So, Michelle, welcome. And we're going to talk today about ley lines and false flags and the old world, and maybe how that applies to us today. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And Carla reached out to me a couple of weeks ago and invited me to do this program on the solstice. And so it's been in the works for a little bit. And it's a subject near and dear to my heart because with all the work that I've done on ley lines, I have seen so many things just kind of pop out from our history, and it's taught me a lot. And I know that the original ley line system is also part of the energy grid. And it's my belief at this point that the energy grid was destroyed deliberately, and that the world we live in today is on the ruins of the old world. And that the original high-tech free energy infrastructure of the original energy grid was turned into the matrix and actually been put to a different use than it was originally. The ley lines and grid connect all of us. It connects everything in existence because that's our holographic nature. It's how we're all connected. So when you hear people talk about being all one and all part of creation, that's how. We're not just individuals like we think, just disconnected from everything. We're very much connected to everything. And that information has been removed from our awareness because it's very powerful. The original energy grid was very powerful. Our connected consciousness is very powerful. And if we know all of this, the ones that have been behind this wouldn't have a chance. And so they've done everything that they can to prevent that from happening. So ley lines used to be on old maps and they were removed. And all we see are the longitude and latitude. But you go back to maps from hundreds of years ago and you see them on there. So removing this grid system, I think, was probably one of the first things that they did, but then they've also been exploiting it. And when you think of schools and churches and old libraries and museums and theaters, those are all old world buildings, the original ones. And a lot of them are gone. They've been torn down. But there's something going on by having these important areas of our life, from education to worship to entertainment, in these high power places. And insane asylums are also found on these ley lines, and they were old world buildings before they were put to different use. And so those are all things that came up in my research, and just kind of bolsters that, because I started out with a general understanding of that years ago when I got started in blogging and making videos in 2018. I had an idea of unity consciousness and sacred geometry and ley lines and an ancient civilization called Lemuria and the Moors. I had that when I started. And then when I started looking at cities and places in alignment, everything just kind of fell out of the ether. So it's now that when I do research, it takes me a lot longer because I know more about what to look for. And any one place that I look at, I could stay forever, just pulling things out from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been working on the Ontario side of Lake Ontario for weeks now, and I'm just leaving Hamilton. And I went from St. Catharines through Hamilton, over an hour in the video, and I still have a ways to go. So there's just so much to find and bring forward. It's taking longer. So there's a lot of information that will finally be done, but it's a good thing and it's a not good thing. It's easy to get bogged down in the weeds and the details.
Yeah.
But I feel like I need those details because I'm talking about things that have not been talked about before. So I need to show exactly why I believe what I believe.
Yeah, and I appreciate the details. I've been with some friends. Have been doing a old world energy grid tuning, and so I've been trying to, I guess, grasp what all the components of the energy grid are. And so I was reading one of your more recent posts, or in the last few weeks, about the railroads and things, railroads and trolley parks and amusement parks, and it just keeps expanding, right, into all the old world buildings that were set on those and what they were used for.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and how they disappeared.
Yeah.
But since you brought up the topic of ley lines and false flags, there's something that I want to share today that is a really good way to illustrate what I'm talking about and what this subject is about.
Great.
So the first thing I'm going to do is share my screen and go into what a definition of false flag is. So can you see that okay? Is it showing up on your?
There. Nope. Is that it? Yeah, false flag.
There you go. I see it now. That's it. Okay. So, years and years ago, I think false flags have been happening for a long time, and there are things that we wouldn't have thought about. I know I didn't think about it when something would happen, and I think wars and conflicts fall into this category as well. But typically, if you look at false flag, the way that it's applied now and the way we're applying is a political or military act orchestrated in such a way that it appears to have been carried out by a party that is not in fact responsible. And a good way of explaining that, I just got out of there, let me come back. A good way of explaining that is it's terrorist attacks, all the mass shootings with the gunman that comes in, and we've had way too many of them over the years, and we've had a lot of them this year. It seems to happen every time something else happens. Maybe something positive happens, and then they bring out the old textbook playbook. I think Bill Cooper talked about it in Behold a Pale Horse. It's part of the playbook that they use to terrorize and traumatize people and get them to go along with a program or stop something else from happening. And that's probably the most typical application of it. And before I woke up to all of this, it never even dawned on me that it wasn't real. Now, maybe in the last 10 to 15 years or so, maybe longer, I've been attuned to it. And like now I'm attuned to the grid. So when I hear news about a shooting, it'll click that that's on the grid. And I'm going to give an example to get started on one that happened back at the end of September. Because immediately when I heard about it, I knew it was right on a ley line that I looked at. But if you think about like the Kennedy assassination back in 1963, which happened just a couple months after I was born. So I came in right before Kennedy was assassinated. And, you know, a lot of people say he's still alive. I don't know. And I can't speak to that. I can only kind of go with what I know from my own research. And I'm not an insider, so I don't have insider information. But I'm pretty good at reading between the lines. And I'm getting better at reading between the lines when it comes to how the energy grid's been manipulated to manipulate us and our emotions. And like Kathy said, loose harvesting, because that's basically what they're doing. Everything's kind of been set up for this unhealthy energy harvesting for beings that need it, and we're the victims. But we don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
You call it out, you're called crazy, you're called a conspiracy theorist, you know, the whole 9 yards. Well, the problem is it's real. It's really happening, and there's really something going on that puts humanity at a very, very strong disadvantage in the situation, because we don't know we don't know. And it's all they have. It's how they've gotten away with it. And so they have to have our consent to do anything of the things that they've done. So they get it through line to us. And that's exactly how they've gotten it. Well, it's like a house of cards. And they are getting more exposed. And, you know, they have to tell more lies to cover it up. Well, you can only tell so many lies before the whole thing just comes crashing down. The thing is, like in our culture, and this is worldwide, the mainstream media is one of their ways of accomplishing this. And so thankfully with the internet and social media, there's more information available about different ways of looking at things. But for most of our lives, we didn't have that. You know, in my parents' generation, they watched the evening news and read the newspaper every day. I never got bit by that bug. I haven't watched television in years. I haven't watched mainstream news in years. Never cared to read the paper. But for them, it was almost like a daily ritual. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to question what the newscaster tells them. It's just not going to happen. So if they're getting misinformation, they don't have the alternative information to question it, unfortunately.
Right.
And it's not something that's easy to talk about because the level of disinformation and programming goes so deep, like basically every aspect of our lives, that most people aren't ready to find that out. So I don't talk to my family about this because they're not ready for it. I have 2 cousins that I can have some level of conversation about this kind of thing, but that's it, my whole family. And so, and I don't think I'm alone in that kind of situation.
That's what I was going to say. I think
so
everybody.
Jana, the interesting thing about Prescott, as I like to say, is where the old world meets the old west. Yeah. I see where Janet lived here for a while. You know, it's weird because this is an old world town, obviously, clearly, if you live here. But the old west is what's brought forward, and that's what everybody sees. So they're walking past this beautiful old world city, and it's not even a thought in their head. And every time I leave my house, it's like, what am I looking at? What's going on here? It's very, very, very hilly. And I don't think they built new buildings on top of the hills. I think the old buildings were there and the hills were just pushed up by something that happened, because I personally think that the grid was attacked directly, and that when that happened, the earth shaped the courthouse. You got the Prescott Armory, Prescott College, Sisters of Mercy, and then the whole downtown area of Prescott, which is just a few minutes from where I live, is old world. And then I look out my window right here and I see Aspen Creek, and there's a megalithic stone wall right outside my window. Creeks were canals. They were part of the system also. I think the mud flood was the result of the destruction of the grid. And so I think the grid was made to destroy itself. And when that happened, it caused the surface of the earth to change to estuaries and deserts and dunes and hilly places. So Gurley Street in Prescott is one of those streets that's very steep at the top, and it goes down, and you can see where the road covers up the windows and doors and things like that. And you see that same looking effect all over the earth.
Hey,
it's like, why would you build the way that it looks like they built if they in fact built it?
Yeah. Michelle, could you explain more of why you feel the grid was made to destroy itself, or how?
Sure, and then I'll get into my example here. So I think there's a very good chance that frequency was used to destroy it, and there's also a good chance that directed energy weapons were used to destroy it. But the original energy grid was like a perfectly tuned scientific and musical instrument. Every bit of infrastructure on the surface of the earth was there for a specific reason and a specific purpose. And so, look at cathedrals with the cathedral rose windows and the steeples and all the stuff going on with those. The organs inside the cathedrals and churches, railroad stations look like cathedrals. Everything was working perfectly in harmony, and this was worldwide. And if you add a non-resonant frequency to a resonant system, it will cause it to destroy itself. So, like if you have one frequency with a wine glass, and you're making the sound by going around the edge of it, and you add that same frequency, it will cause the wine glass to shatter, and that can go up exponentially. And so I think it was possibly a combination of non-resonant frequency going through the grid, and that caused the grid to just kind of simultaneously explode and destroy whatever was around it, or that there was some kind of directed energy weapon, because I do believe external forces caused this to happen. I don't think it was a natural occurrence. I think it was a deliberately caused event.
Right.
And a lot of my research that I do is looking at those kinds of things specifically. Deserts, dunes. I mean, Arizona's a desert, and there's pockets of trees, beautiful trees and water, and something caused the desert, not only here but in other places. And Arizona had a lot of giant trees. So Thumb Butte, it's not far from where I live, and it's clearly a giant tree stump. Once you're aware of giant trees. And this whole area had a lot of giant trees once you start to see it. But until you become aware of it, it looks like rock. It doesn't look like a tree. So that's one of the ways they've been able to get away with it. So let me go ahead and go to something else here on the subject that we're talking about. In September of this year, so I brought another one up, if you can bring that on. In September of this year, there was a false flag that occurred in North Carolina at the end of September. And it was the mass shooting that occurred at the American Fish Company in Southport, North Carolina. And several people were hurt in that were killed and injured. From this man that was on a boat who fired shots at the waterfront bar in the city of North Carolina. And when I was learning about it, remember the man who did the shooting was from Oak Island in that area, and this is in the Cape Fear River region. So the Oak Island was mentioned, and I spent a great deal of time following what's called the Serpent Ley that starts in the Bermuda Triangle and goes up through that area. And I followed it to Lake Itasca, Minnesota, which is the headwaters of the Mississippi River. This is not one of the ley lines I found. A lot of my work is based on my own research on ley lines that I found off of what I call the North American Star tetrahedron by connecting cities and places in North America. That's where my work started, and I can bring that up or not. That's one thing about StreamYard. I'm more familiar with Zoom, but StreamYard works a little differently. Maybe it will. But let me talk about this first, and then I'll see if I can pull up my grid spreadsheets. This is a ley line that was found by a man named Peter Champaux. It's spelled Champaux, and his website is geometryofplace.com, and he's got a lot of great work on ley lines on his website. Somebody mentioned it and something else that I did, and so I just decided at some point that I was going to follow this whole ley line, at least a section of it, because the ley lines continue on in either direction. And let me just again reiterate that there's no place these ley lines are not. So we just get snapshots of them, but everything connects them. So like in downtown Prescott, where the courthouse is the center of town, literally the center of town, the whole life of the community revolves around it at holiday season. It's all brightly lit up around Christmas. It's beautiful. In the old world buildings. And there's a bandstand right next to a rotunda. And the courthouse is literally on the flattest real estate in that area. So it's like a heavy building, heavy Greco-Roman looking building. And everything else is kind of like, whoo, all around it. But these courthouses that look like old world architecture and all over the place typically have those bandstands or rotundas or whatever they're called. They also seem to have been a part of the energy grid as well, having something to do with sound. But typically you'll see a courthouse and one of these rotundas located right next to each other, which is kind of interesting. So let me go into the Serpent Ley, because it really does tie a lot of this stuff together. I learned about the Southport shooting, and Southport is right next to this ley line. Like when you're first coming into it, in the Cape Fear area. I was going to show you on my Google Earth, but I'm not sure how to pull that up here. So let me just kind of go through this a little bit. So I'm following this ley line that somebody told me about from Peter's work. It was a very productive line of research. And I did this back in August of 2023. And it took me a while to do it. That was when I published it. So I probably started in July, sometime in July. And as I said here, it's taken me weeks longer to finish than I expected, and contains something of everything: star forts and lighthouses, abandoned railroads, giant trees, hardwood swamps, dunes, mountains with perfect astronomical alignments, giants, fires, floods, extensive resource harvesting, mills, mines, company towns, you name it. And this was one of the places that started to really solidify for me this whole hypothesis that I have about how everything was interconnected and what happened to it. And ever since then, I just keep finding more and more information. Coastal North Carolina has a lot of star forts. This was the one that he told me about, but there's several here. And I found out more about this area since then. So there's just a lot here. I didn't know about this. I thanked him for sharing, and I started at what came up for me on Google Earth for where the Bermuda Triangle was, and carried it on through Minnesota. And I'm going to try to skip through some of this because it's just it's a lot of information. So this ley line goes right through Cape Fear, Wilmington, this whole area. This is where the film studio that Bruce Lee's son Brandon was shot when the movie The Crow was being filmed in 1993. It's the largest movie studio outside of Hollywood. You kind of see along the coastline, it's muddy and murky. And I think that's the result of sunken land, ruined land. I talk about Charles Lyell and his work on the ice ages in the 1800s that came down to us as the only accepted explanation for what we see in our world today. That everything's always been the same. And if you start talking about catastrophes or catastrophism, you tend to get shut down and not taken seriously about it. I looked here at first at the star forts, and then I looked around at the shipwrecks and the reefs in this area, and it's known as a graveyard of the Atlantic because of all the shipwrecks that have taken place here. And I've developed that in my research in the years that I've been doing this since then. There's a lot of places like that along the coast that are known for shipwrecks. The Great Lakes are known for shipwrecks. Again, they want us to believe everything's natural, and it's always been that way, but I see things differently at this point. When I was first going through this area, I was just taking notes and recording what I was seeing. So it's really fleshed out since then. So for some reason, there's a lighthouse on top of this big structure off the coast, and it's popular with scuba divers to check out the wrecks. Let's see. We're getting into the Caswell Beach on Oak Island, where there was used to be a star fort. And this is where the guy was from that was behind the shooting. It became operational in 1958. And the Coast Guard station was accidentally burned down in 2002, we're told, and we're also told it was built to resemble the original, which is pretty typical of what they tell us, and that the Oak Island light replaced the Cape Fear light on Bald Head Island, and that was demolished in 1958, and that the current Cape Fear light was built in 1903 to replace the Bald Head light. And then you get into weird stories about, like, the lens of the Cape Fear light was given to the demolition contractor. It ended up in an antique store and sold off in pieces. And then in 2009, the Old Baldy Foundation acquired what was left of it with plans to restore and display it near the former site of the Cape Fear light, which hasn't happened. It's still kind of sitting there. But then you look at what you see here at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York. Just big, beautiful lights. And I think the purposes of the lighthouses in these lenses was very different from what we're told. And they're massive, massive structures. When you're next to these types of places, you can't even take a picture of how big they are. Just kind of have to look around at everything else. But I went to see the Sulphur Springs Water Tower when I was in Tampa a few years ago, and it's just massive. It's incredible. The snaky S-shaped rivers are through these areas, and those are worldwide. And this is in a swamp area called the Green Swamp, where the Venus flytrap is found. It's like the area where the Venus flytrap is native to is in this area around Wilmington, North Carolina. In this area here, South Carolina, which brought to my little swamp of horrors and scary plants. I want to point out that this was one of the places that I found a hang on just a second, let me come to it. Me being detailed. Maybe I put in too many details sometimes, but this area has a historic railroad going through it. The Lake Waccamaw Depot Museum is located in what is called a 1904 Atlantic Coast Rail Line Depot. And I find it's really weird that a train station and a rail line are in the middle of a swampy area. But in our historical narrative, swamps and the like are, we're already there. The swamps are the ruined lands of this original civilization that built the rail and the canals to begin with, and not the ones that claims building up for later. But there you've got the historic rail line going right past Waccamaw Lake through the swamp. And so this whole way I'm finding this kind of information when I'm looking on the ley line. And you've got the locks and dams of the Cape Fear River going through the region. And there's a story for everything, built by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The first one was completed in 1915 above Wilmington, and that was in the middle of World War I. And same thing with the second one, still within the time frame of World War I. But they still give us pictures of it to show that that's what they were doing. That's what they tell us. But they could have just as easily been reclaiming it and bringing it back into working order. And I think that was the likeliest explanation for what we see. And then this last one was said to have been built during the Great Depression. So the stories don't hold up. And then I found the Fayetteville Works plant, which was operated by a company connected to DuPont since the 1970s. I do believe it's still there. It's right next to this location here with the lock and the dam. And it's been known as a site for environmental chemical contamination in this area. So they're doing things on these significant ley lines that aren't good. So not only the false flags, but they have their chemical sites here as well. I'll talk about the DuPonts being one of the 13 Illuminati bloodline families. And they got started around the beginning of 1800, which is when I think things were really starting to get underway. You've got Fort Bragg. It was Fort Liberty. I think they just turned it back into Fort Bragg here. With the home of the 82nd Airborne Division. And then there was a green ramp disaster that occurred on March 23rd of 1994 when 2 military aircraft collided in midair over Pope Army Airfield, which is right in the same area. Again, I'm talking about false flags and things happening on these ley lines that are traumatic. And that's why I would take the time to put something like this in here. I learned about the green ramp disaster when I was doing timeline research. So again, I kind of put 2 and 2 together on that. Got the research triangle between North Carolina State University in Raleigh, Duke University in Durham, and University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And the research triangle headquarters is centrally located within the triangle. And there are a lot of tech companies and enterprises located near the research facilities of these universities. And it's the largest research park in the United States. What came out of that for me was learning that a lot of the high-tech companies are also agricultural technology companies like Bayer and others as well, where they're working on GMOs. So Bayer is an example of one of these ag tech companies acquired Monsanto on June 7th of 2018 after gaining the United States and EU regulatory approvals for $66 billion in cash, and the name of Monsanto is no longer used. And I was keyed into this GMO agriculture occurring on grid lines from another ley line that I tracked in Iowa, where I found a lot of the same things. And then also in Mexico, there's another area where they do a lot of things with GMOs. But they're doing it on these grid lines, which I think were originally, it was all part of the agricultural system, orchards and farms and you name it, and it was for the good of all, and not this this evil stuff. We talked a little bit about Monsanto being established in St. Louis, Missouri in 1901, and all the stuff that it brought us before Bayer bought it. So all of these GMO companies either currently have facilities in or have in the past in the research triangle. All of these, the big 6. So let me go ahead and stop sharing for a moment, because there's a lot of information in here, and I don't want to bore you. But it's been a fascinating journey, and there's more to find, which is really why it's taking me so long when I do research these days because it's everywhere.
Mhm.
It's like, what do I keep? What do I leave out?
Hmm.
Do you have any questions, Carla, or any observations?
Not right now. I guess I just, it's I guess kind of overwhelming how um every everything was taken over, right? And and even though I've known about it for a
Mhm.
number of years and everything, it's still just mind-boggling how it can all um how it all happened in the takeover. And is there any chance, is there any, not just chance, I think there's always a chance, but maybe later after you're done with your um what you're telling us about, speak to any um a likelihood or probability, or how it could be taken back. Give some hope for the day.
I do, absolutely. I mean, I don't do this because I think, oh my gosh, this is so terrible. They're going to get away with it. I'm thinking, there's no way they're going to get away with what they've done.
Right, in the long run.
And I
Yeah.
absolutely
in
believe
the,
that.
in the
I get
spiritual
this information out to, right, to show people, hey, this is what happened. Nothing is like what we've been told. And when you look at the narrative, it just all falls apart, every bit of it. And this very
Mhm.
scary, sordid story comes out of the shadows, but it is coming out into the light, and it is from a lot of different places. And everybody that steps forward to the plate, like you are with your show, is taking responsibility for educating people and informing people about our own areas of insight and expertise. I know I can't do what you do, and what you do is extremely important. So, and that's part of the healing too. What you do is very much part of the healing, because this grid system is like our collective consciousness and collective soul, past and present.
Yeah.
And so, yes, they've taken full advantage of their awareness of the grid and what they can do with it. But in spite of everything that they've done, we're still waking up.
Mhm.
And they did everything that it could to prevent that, or prevent most people from waking up. And it seems slow. It seems like it's taking forever. It does to me.
Mhm.
Nothing is happening the way that I expected it would. I can see things happening. Um, and there's a lot of people that are still asleep, people that we know, friends, family.
Mhm.
But there has, I think we've reached critical mass. I mean, I think it doesn't take everybody waking up. It takes enough people waking up, and our collective consciousness is all connected. And you read about that with David Hawkins' book, Power versus Force, and how one person doing spiritual work can raise the collective consciousness, from joy and bliss on one end and fear and shame on the other end.
I know
And
I
they've done our
feel
level best to trap us in our lower chakras and keep us there, and keep us.
I feel a difference in tuning from when I
Go ahead, Carl.
started. I feel a difference in tuning from when I started a number of years ago. It's definitely not as uh, resistive, not as much holding back. It's like more of the universe, more of the ancestors, um, more of the collective energy, I guess you could say, that's willing to work with you, willing to um, come forward and make that change in their energies too, throughout the timelines. I feel more and more joining, less of the resistance compared to a number of years ago.
Yeah, and you're doing that work, and other people are doing that work. Some people are intuitively connected to the grid, and so there's a lot of grid workers that are drawn to doing this. I don't think I would be doing this work if I didn't have a connection, even though my connection is different from somebody else's. But we're all bringing this forward in our own ways. And Drew, I agree. If their plan was going to be successful, we either wouldn't be around or we would be facing lockdown and forced jabs and all that stuff. I mean, it's okay to still say that or not, but it's like it would be a different world if they still had control of the levers of power, and they don't. And I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So I see my role is hopefully, with the style that I have, getting people to start looking around their own communities and start looking at their everything differently and questioning everything, because it doesn't take much for their narrative to just fall apart, especially with buildings in your community. The older buildings that are called Victorian era or whatever, instead to have been built, like say around the turn of the 19th centuries. And we don't build like that today. A lot of these buildings, they're just so well made. The stories don't match up. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say. I'm really not in this to say, hey, look at this. This is right. It's more like, look at this. Come to your own conclusion. Do your own research. Does this make sense? And go from there. Because one of the first things that they did was take critical thinking out of the educational system around the 1850s, when a lot of other things were going on. They removed critical thinking. They don't want us to think on our own. They only wanted to educate most people well enough to read and write, follow directions and whatnot. Produce workers, factory workers. So the goal of the educational system has not been to create critical thinkers. And so we kind of have to do that on our own. I think I accomplished it by unplugging from the matrix a long time ago. And I just, I was never interested in what most people were interested in. And I made different decisions. And as a result, I was never really caught up by having to believe a certain way or anything like that. I lived in a lot of different places. And I just had all this information coming into me from all these different places that I lived until I was ready to do something with it, which has been in the last 20 years or so. And yeah, Drew, I mean, I believe we're fractals of God also. And they do keep us in fear, and they do keep us distracted and divided and at odds with each other. So we don't realize our co-creative powers when we join our consciousness together. Because we're more powerful than they are. And they can't have that. So they do everything they can possibly do to keep us confused and floundering and not knowing what's going on, which I think is probably the most troubling aspect of what's going on right now. Is even for those of us that are awake, it's still confusing, because the one group of people that are trying to be there for good and for light are not agreeing with each other, and they are so well organized, or at least they have been, and they stick with the same story and they stick with the same lies. And then you have the good guys they can't get together. You don't know what's going on. So to me, that's the most disturbing thing is what I'm seeing right now. It's like, okay, I'm going on faith and trust and hope that things are going to get better because I believe that with all my heart. But, just to, even following on social media, like I don't even look at mainstream stuff. So I can't even imagine with that, they're pushing the same line, and, social media is coming up with all this, he said, she said, people that you would think would be on the same team are really struggling right now, it seems like.
Well, and we can apply that. I mean,
But
since
I still do believe that good wins.
and I was just going to say we could apply that on the individual level as well, right? Finding the honesty and integrity and light by listening to spirit within each of us, despite the confusion that our mind has, right? That we're uh, surrounded with in our lives, and I don't know. I'm so often at different times, or at least lately, the last few days or weeks, it's like, why doesn't my mind think better? And I'm doing lots of stuff to try to. It's not like I'm like worried about it, like I'm going senile or anything, but it's like, the mind just doesn't process thinking the way I would like it to be as sharp as I would like it to, or whatever. But the yes, Kathy, the trusting your gut, trusting spirit within you, and finding that honesty and integrity, and using that in the communication in which we share these things that we're finding and that we feel and think about it. That in itself lights up the grid too.
Right. Right. I completely agree. And it's interesting. Don't feel alone in the difficulty thinking. I mean, I seem to have what I need to do the work that I'm doing, but outside of that, it's like my brain's just tired.
Yeah.
It doesn't work as well as I would like sometimes, but it works well for what I'm doing, but that seems to be about it. New information, forget about it. But I feel like this is what I came here to do. So I have, I want to say an unlimited supply of energy to do this. But
Mm-hmm.
there's what I'm seeing are two different things playing out, and the prophecy that's available to us. You hear about a divergence, or a bifurcation of time. I'm not sure where I fall with that, or where I feel how I feel about that, but I can certainly see that we seem to be on two different tracks in terms of the ugliness of what's playing out in the world and how it impacts people collectively and individually, and then a whole bunch of people that are creating the new.
Mm-hmm.
And the love and the light of our who we are and our birthright and our connectedness to each other. And I've kind of been watching that unfold in awe, because if you kind of, and I've got to stay off my my social media, because that's the only place that I get information, news and information about what's going on, because that can be like really depressing.
Yeah.
But focusing my attention on other things, and seeing how beautifully the synchronicity works and the connections work. Janet, Carla called you a connector for her, and I've had those kinds of connectors in my life, and other people, and just see those connections come together synchronistically. and things happen, beautiful things happening. You tune into that, that's happening as well. And also knowing that what has taken place here is just such an off the charts crime against humanity and the creator, all life. It's been done without our knowledge and consent. It can't stand. They want it to because it's their only, only chance of continuity. They don't have what we have. They don't have this divine spark within. They're parasites. So they have to get it synthetically. Well, the only way they can keep going is to figure out a way to have it forever, which is what they've been working on with transhumanism and everything, and messing people up, and the gender ideology and things like that. There's so many things playing out right now that are really disturbing. With the division of race and religion, and all the things that are dividing people right now with immigration and all of that, with a lot of people not realizing the criminals that are coming in and being brought in intentionally to disrupt people's lives, whether it's permanently by killing them or hurting them in some way. Those stories have been coming out more lately. That's all been done by design, by those behind this. And so, most people think things are just happening randomly. They're not just happening randomly. There's a very definite purpose behind them, but it's getting exposed. It's getting exposed for the first time since it's been happening, which has been our modern history, the history we learn about in school. So the challenge is waking up to all of this horror story kind of stuff, and yet staying in love and staying in our hearts. Mm-hmm. And that's what Drew's talking about with this reset coming in, where we connect back together again in our hearts. And again, that really is the challenge, is growing up in this fear-based world and having been programmed and conditioned into fear, but coming back into our hearts and coming in together, because we are truly one being in physical form. And those are the kinds of things that they've wanted to remove from our awareness and turn us into the worst possible versions of ourselves. So they've been doing that, working hard at it, but we're still waking up and we're still connecting. So that's my message. I don't believe they're going to get away with this.
How long do you think it's been going on? I mean, as far as on the old world building scale, a lot of people are talking about the reset of, I think you have two have started maybe in 1776, but the current, because that makes it like the 250 years, and some people are for 2026, and some people are calling that the 250 year prophecy of the Bible, or part of the 1250 or 1260, right? But what about do you have thoughts on the prophecy, or on how long it existed prior?
Oh, absolutely, because so part of my original work is the timeline that I discerned or was guided to, which was between 1492 and 1942, which makes 1717 the midpoint year. And there's 225 years between 1492 and 1717, and 225 years between 1717 and 1942. So it's a 450-year period, which is divisible by 9, which gives you 50-year periods in between. And when I did the timeline research on that, I found significant things happening at the beginnings of those 50-year periods, there was something going on. And then 1717, the midpoint, was the first year of the Premier Grand Lodge of England, and that was also the year that the same lodge introduced the Analuchus, and they add 4,000 years to whatever year it is. And then other things were going on in 1717. That was about the time King George I ascended to the throne of Britain from Germany, and the last Stuart heir, James Francis Edward Stuart, was prevented from the throne. So basically the royal house of Stuart was forced out of the monarchy, and their ascendancy ended. And I think they were the original kings, and I think their bloodline goes back to Solomon, like the Ethiopian emperor. Is the Solomonic house, and I think they were connected. I think the royalty was the House of Solomon, and that was worldwide. And one of the first things they did was replace the royalty with their own people. And I've also looked at that. So I kind of put something around 1717. I think it's significant. There's a lot of numerology in the good stuff and in what they've taken, what's taken place ever since. So there's power in numerology, and the controllers have also reversed that. And so I found a lot of anomalous things going on with like 7s and 17s, and just really weird stuff that popped out of the historical narrative when I started looking specifically within that time frame. So what I think is that there was this false time loop in the shape of a figure 8 that was superimposed over what was already here on Earth, and that the original civilization existed for a very, very long time, was highly advanced, was connected to the Moors, it was connected to the tribes of Israel. The controllers just separated all of that out when they set up their new world and their new world system, and gave everything new meanings. So everything we've ever been taught to believe about anything is highly suspect in my book, and just question everything. And that sometime, and I'm comfortable with saying sometime in the 1700s. 1717 was the year I found, but there's also 1740s, and Mayor Rothschild was born in 1744. Adam Weishaupt was born in 1748, and Duke Francis of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld was born in 1750. So you've got the progenitor of the Rothschild dynasty, you've got the founder of the Bavarian Illuminati, and you've got the progenitor of the royal houses of Europe coming in within a few years. And I think that was sometime in the 1700s was their beginning of this new timeline. And that prior to that, I think, is just backfill. I think they just completely gave us a new history based on real people, based on certain things, but not, it's just what they educate us in. And it was not a warring world. The empires of the world prior to that were in harmony and balance, and they were using the same templates, the Moorish Masons that were worldwide, the worldwide builders, master builders, and they built all of the original infrastructure perfectly designed, perfectly aligned with the heavens, and everywhere else on Earth. It's like a GPS, the building coordinates and everything. They knew exactly where they were. They knew exactly who they were. They knew exactly why they were here, which was to reconnect with their higher selves, and not this consumerism, addictive world that we've been placed in, which I believe they turned it into an occulted timeline, which the word culture is in, to drug us and to keep us distracted and to take our money. I don't think it was anything like that before. And I think that's where we really get wrapped around the axles on trying to believe anything we've ever been told and trying to work that in when I think they just gave us a false history. They gave us false identities, especially the original people, and usurped identities and credit and everything else. And everything is extremely mixed up because of, for example, taking the identity of the original children of Israel and claiming it for themselves and saying, the Rothschilds bought the land that the state of Israel is on today, starting in the 1800s, and then saying, we're the chosen people, we're the ones. And then having generations of people believe that, just like having generations of people believe that Hollywood Westerns are telling real history when nothing could be further from the truth. Everything was turned into this virtual reality Truman Show kind of thing, and we're none the wiser for it, or have not been, until the internet came along. And I think it's been a major part of our awakening. There was, I still believe God wins and God was going to win anyway, but it's hard now, and we have all this technology to kind of swim through all the densities and the lies that we've been told. It's just been very effective, unfortunately. Yeah. I mean, if you think of all the people in law enforcement and the courts and everything else, if they were genuine, honest people, a lot of the stuff that's happening today wouldn't be happening because they wouldn't let it. But instead, they're enablers, and they're right in there with them, enforcing all of the evil stuff that's taking place. The whole thing with the murder of the ostriches in British Columbia was just heartbreaking to me. Yeah, I do believe Aleister Crowley is a big part of this. I don't know about Joe Rogan being Aleister Crowley, but I do believe Barbara Bush was. That's my conspiracy theory on that. It's been around for quite a while that Barbara Bush was his daughter, and I tend to believe that they are one and the same.
Interesting, yeah.
And also hear that, sadly, that Betty White of the Golden Girls was also one of Crowley's daughters, and one of the worst in all of the evil stuff in Hollywood, especially with Snow White and Adrenochrome. But again, those are things I can't substantiate. None of that I can substantiate. I just do believe that that there's a lot of so many things that we've been fooled about, and one of them is men posing as women, very well-known women. That's been one of the biggest things that they pulled over on us. Lots of them, especially in high-level roles. So it's they've done everything they possibly can to keep us from knowing what's really going on here. But I do absolutely believe they're not going to get away with what they've done, and we will live to see it.
I want it to happen in our lifetime. Yes,
it's not that far away.
Yeah. I was wondering if everybody.
I think things are in motion for changes.
Yeah, go ahead. No,
go ahead. I'm my thoughts complete.
Okay. Does anyone have another question for Michelle?
I could keep going on with information, but it's very overwhelming. It gets that way.
It's hard to keep.
I
Hard
just
for
showed you a
me.
little bit of that part of the serpent lay between, yeah, and I take it all the way up to Minnesota, and there's so much stuff that came out when I was looking just at that one area, where it really looks like they knew where to go to mine the grid, the coal and the iron ore and all that stuff. And then you see the company towns that grow up around these places and how the people that worked for the company basically had a job for life, but they were dirt poor and they relied on the company for everything. The wealthy got even wealthier, and then when the mines were depleted, they would just leave, and you've got a lot of poverty in Appalachia, and in other places as well. I found that all along this particular ley line, but others as well. It's just pretty. The stories are in there. There's a lot of information in the ley lines, and in terms of handling the info overload, I don't have a good answer for that. Not very well sometimes.
I think trees are excellent for
If I'm getting
handling overload.
overwhelmed, I can't even imagine.
Trees or being outside in general, barefoot if possible, or moccasins, something that so you can really ground to the earth and share that energy, that grid energy from the earth. That's a great way to handle overload. And I was wanting to, again, since it's
Since
solstice.
Cree Warrior.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I was just going to say, since Cree Warrior brought up alchemy, I believe that they alchemized, what was originally positive, and they turned alchemy into a control mechanism. And so I think the ancient alchemy was healing, and they turned it into modern chemistry, which took the poisonous aspects of the same chemical elements that were used for healing. And that's just one example. The clothing used to be silk, made of gold and silver. They got rid of that, and they gave us cotton and wool, and then they put dyes into that, synthetic dyes, and it's just they've been poisoning us for quite a while now. So again, they kind of got into everything, but now we're getting wiser to what's taking place here.
I would like us each to, as part of this, as kind of united here to, since it is the solstice, to take just a few moments to join our intentions together for the highest good, for this retaking over the grid, or reactivating what was ours and in the world and in ourselves. And does that sound good with you, Michelle? We can just all silently join together for a moment and raise the vibration. So let's go ahead then with that. If everybody could just take a few minutes right now, just a few moments. It doesn't have to be very long, and let's join all our intentions together and to raise the voltage here, to bring more light in the world, to advance our knowledge. and you're welcome to continue as long as you'd like. I just felt the energy so greatly, so clearly of our intentions reaching the heavens, right? Of going throughout the universe. And so thank you, everyone. And Michelle, do you have a final thought you want to leave us with, as well as following that with your contact information?
Yeah, sure. Basically, we're divine beings and we're remembering who we are. And it's time to reconnect in our hearts and love and do our best to keep our head above water with all the stuff that's going on right now, all the things that are playing out, and it's difficult. Even for the awakened, it's very difficult. And we got this. God got this. God has this, and God got it.
Yeah,
and we're living in exciting times.
it is.
I will not give up, ever give up the belief that they're going to get away with what they've done. It's not going to happen.
Good deal. Good deal.
And as far as my information, my YouTube channel is. Let me put it in the comments.
Oh yeah,
my
that'd be
YouTube
great.
channel is Michelle Gibson 8946, and then my website is Piercing the Veil of Illusion. And my main contacts are on my, so it's Piercing the Veil of Illusion.com. It didn't post for some reason. But if you look under my video descriptions, I do have my links there. And, it's just great to be able to be on your show, Carla. And thank you for all the work that you're doing. And thank you for everybody joining us today on the call.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Thank you
Don't give
so
up
much
hope,
for
ever.
coming on. Thank you. And I was wanting to, anyone interested is welcome to join us. Oh, that didn't show very long. Our next Old World Energy Grid biofield tuning is Saturday, January 4th, 4 p.m. Central Time. And I usually have a few friends join me to add our intentions together to clear what we can and help activate and amplify the grid. To bring this on, right? Do our part to bring this forward again. So, and Michelle, I'll put your contact information in the description here below.
I can't emphasize how important it is, Carla. Okay, thank you. And I was just saying the work that you're doing is very, very important, Carla. Very important.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. As is yours, for sure. As is yours, bringing knowledge to us all.
Well,
for sure. And
but the actual hands-on healing of the grid is so important.
And sometimes I only have like one person joining, which is fine, and I could do it myself. But it's so much more. It's so much more energy, and it's so much more good being done to join each other literally as well as just in our thoughts. And so if there's anyone listening that is interested in being part of it and joining us online when we do it once on every full moon, once in a while, you wouldn't have to do it every time or anything because everybody's busy, but just put it in the chat or send me an email or something like that, so that we can get you as part of it if you'd like to be once in a while. So, all right. I guess that's it for today then. We had a little bit of lag time in our internet, so if you found it didn't flow as quite as smoothly, that's why. We were just trying to be sure that everything needed to be said, get through in time, or get through to so everyone could hear. Oh, good. There's someone. Great. I don't know how to contact you. Can you send me an email at Carla at gmail.com? Yeah, that would be great, Kathy. Thank you. And so thank you, Janet. I'm just looking through thank you so much and for joining, and Joanne and everyone else. And I appreciate you being here. And again, Michelle, thank you so much. Okay.
You're welcome. Thank you, Carla.
And wait, the 5353, Mark Ray, did you want to be part of it? No, I don't understand. Do you know what he's trying to say? Michelle, do you know what he's trying to say?
Okay. No.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Well, we'll just end there today then. And thank you all. And
all right. Thanks again.
okay. Bye-bye.